Now, you'll have watched the tragedy of the Grenfell Flats inferno like me, and I'm sure with a sense of horror, anger, and then pride actually in the way that the community acted afterwards. At least 79 people died. Well, the former Bristol West MP, Stephen Williams, is one of 4 government ministers who were warned repeatedly that the people living in such towers were at risk, according to a BBC Panorama investigation. A dozen letters were sent by the All-Party Parliamentary Fire Safety and Rescue Group following a blaze at Lakenall House in South London in 2009, and we're told that a government review was promised, and we're apparently still waiting for that. Stephen Williams joins me now. So after that Lakenall House, a review was set up, but apparently we are still waiting for outcomes.
Well, after the Lakenall House fire, which was in 2009, so quite a long time ago, the building code was revised twice, in 2010 and in 2013. And it's important that people understand that the building regulations specify that any building, I think it's over 3 stories, must be built in such a way that a fire simply cannot spread from one floor to another. So, like you, as you just mentioned, when I saw what was happening at Grenfell Tower, I simply could not believe that something as horrific as that could possibly happen, because all the regulations that are in place are designed to make sure the fire can't spread in that way.
You couldn't believe it, but a lot of people could, Stephen, and I think that's where the problems come in. Experts, the Fire Brigade Union was questioning the cladding straight after that and said something's got to be done and it's got to be looked at. Ronnie King, former Chief Fire Officer of that all-party fire group, for 4 years has been saying we've got to have a review, there is going to be a major tragedy. So where did the communication break down or get lost between them saying that and you saying there is no urgency?
Well, the letter that was written to me in early 2014 asked for sprinklers to be looked at again. Again, it's important that people understand that since, I think it's 2005, for new buildings, and this is what building regulations cover, they don't cover old buildings, and of course the majority of building stock in the country will not be new, but for new buildings they say that sprinklers can be installed as part of the measures to hold back a fire. But they do not say that sprinklers should be retrospectively installed in old buildings. And successive governments, going back over a decade, have said that that would be going far too far to do that, both in terms of disruption to people's lives.
To what people were saying. I mean, in simple terms, would you stay on the 24th floor of a building that had one stairway, no fire alarm, no sprinklers, and was covered, sprinkler system, and was covered in plastic? Would you stay in such a building, even for a night?
Well, I probably have, in terms of staying in hotels, for instance, which would be governed by the same building regulations. If you're building something in which people are going to live on a temporary or a permanent basis, it's got to be fire resistant. That is the basic building code in the country.
Was
it? And that's why there's going to be an inquiry.
Catastrophically, it wasn't.
No, and that's why there's going to be an inquiry to find out what went wrong.
But it's too late now, Stephen.
But the building code itself, if it had been complied with, then a fire should not have spread. And that is what the professional civil servants, or the experts in this area, would have advised me, and ministers prior to me, and those who have come after me.
And they were horribly wrong, weren't they?
Well, they weren't wrong, because a fire...
They clearly were wrong.
If a building is constructed according to the code, a fire should not be able to spread. And what might have gone wrong, and the inquiry is going to look at this, was the refurbishment work done, I think it was in 2016, in compliance with that code or not? And it looks as though it couldn't possibly have been in compliance with the code itself.
Was that cladding banned in this country?
I don't know. I mean, obviously,
I mean, you were the building regulations, man. You must know.
I was the minister between 2013 and 2015. So if you were asking me when I was in office, obviously an advisor would tell me.
But the Lakenall House fire, cladding was cited as one of the things that needed to be looked at. So surely when that came in and they were saying, please, Stephen Williams, look at it, that must have been one of the things you looked at.
As I understand it, again, it was the break in between each floor that went wrong at that, as well as the cladding itself, which was flammable, and it shouldn't have been. The fire breaks in between each floor should have stopped it from spreading.
But you take my point that whatever gaps there were or weren't, if cladding was involved, and here we are in 2017, when this all-party group said there's going to be a major disaster if something isn't done, and cladding seems to be forefront in the problem, shouldn't that have been looked at?
But that letter, which was the focus, or part of the focus of the Panorama programme, wasn't about cladding. It was about whether sprinklers should be installed in all buildings. And just to say it
Wasn't
again,
it about reviewing fire safety?
Yes, which was happening, and we were doing that at the time.
Why did it take so long?
We were doing it at the time. The major cause of fires is poor electrical work, and what I and the advisors in the department were focused on was revising the code. It's Part P in compliance with Part P of the building code to make sure that when electrical work is done in a house or by a contractor in a block of flats where lots of people live, it's done in compliance with the code. That's where we were focused at the time.
The code is there, but we had one of not even the fire expert, not even Ronnie King from that parliamentary group, but a person who lived in those flats who said, we told them time and time again, even up to last night before the fire, we told them, we pleaded with them, there's going to be a disaster. Why did nobody listen to that?
I know, and that is absolutely terrible. If residents in a building themselves think there is a problem and are referring it, whether it's to their local councillors, to the people who run the building, and the warnings aren't being...
That sounds like, hang on, there's a bit of a rat infestation. There was more than a problem. They were saying there's going to be a disaster, and there was.
And it is appalling if they weren't listened to. Often the people who live in a building will know more about it than people who periodically inspect it. But the fact is, the building code should have stopped that happening, and it looks as though the code wasn't complied with.
Do you think that we've got... What are we going to do? Are we going to tear all the cladding off? The construction companies say they'll go out of business if that happens. This is a major problem. This has got to be sorted out now. We can't wait another 3 or 4 years for a review, can we?
No, I don't.
Shouldn't have waited the last
I heard
time.
the Prime Minister say this afternoon that the person who's been appointed to this inquiry will hopefully come up with an interim report with some sort of immediate findings and recommendations. Obviously, the particular type of cladding is something will have to be looked at. But this wasn't an issue that was raised with me or we looked at it in the time that I was there. That letter was about sprinklers in older buildings on the internal staircases.
So when that group says we're at a loss to understand how you concluded that credible and independent evidence which had life safety implications was not considered to be urgent, they don't understand. That's based on that one letter, is it?
One letter from a Conservative MP into the department saying you should install sprinklers. Obviously what then happens is that the advisors in the department say, no, we've looked at this several times before, including right back to when it was decided that sprinklers should go into new buildings, and it is not the right thing to do. What does a minister do in those circumstances? You follow the professional advice, not the opinion of one MP.
Well, or the parliamentary fire group who are pleading with you to do something.
It is one person.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate you coming on the show, Stephen. Thank you. Thank you very much.